FBI estimates in the United States alone at any given time there are 25 to 50 active serial killers. Now, imagine across the world. Peter Thomas Anthony Manuel was born in New York on March 15, 1926, to Scottish parents. 5 years later, in 1932, the family returned to Scotland and set up home in Motherwell. By the age of 10, Manuel was considered a juvenile delinquent and served his first term in custody at age 15 for sexual assault. In 1946, Manuel attacked and raped a woman for which he served 9 years in Scotland's Peterhead prison. On release in 1953, he moved to Glasgow, where his parents now lived. Manuel was fascinated by American gangsters and perhaps sought to emulate them. The 5'4" tall Manuel had a girlfriend, Anna O'Hara, and was due to marry her on the 30th of July of 1955. Fortunately for Anna, she decided to break off the engagement when she found out about his criminal record. Sadly, on that same day, Peter took out his anger on 29-year-old Mary McLaughlin, whom he abducted and threatened to kill by decapitating her. She was able to escape him and his sexual advances and would be the only later victim to live to testify against him. Manuel's killing spree began on the night of January 2, 1956, when he followed 17-year-old Ann Nealons onto a golf course in East Kilbride, near where he was working at the time as a gas fitter. There, he raped her and battered her to death with an iron bar. As a known sex offender, Manuel was questioned but released without charge after his father provided him with an alibi. Although later he confessed to Ann's murder, he was not convicted of it. On September 17, 1956, Manuel broke into the home of Marion Watt in the High Burnside district of Glasgow. Marion, 45, her sister Margaret, 41, and Marion's 16-year-old daughter Vivian were all shot in their beds, and Vivian was sexually assaulted. Manuel was on bail at this time for a burglary. Marion's husband, William, was initially charged with the killing, but was released 2 months later for lack of evidence. He had been away on a fishing trip on the night in question. Peter Manuel then served an 18-month prison sentence for burglary and was released in November of '57 to resume killing. His next victim was 36-year-old taxi driver Sidney Dunn, who was murdered on December 8th in Newcastle on Tyne, where Manuel was looking for work. Mr. Dunn was shot in the head and then had his throat slit. By the time Dunn's body was discovered on Northumbria moorland, Manuel had returned to Lancashire. Northumbria police attended his trial and would have charged him with this murder had he been acquitted of the Scottish killings. 17-year-old Isabel Cook was abducted on December 28th of 1957 as she went out to meet her boyfriend at a nearby bus stop to go to a dance at Uddingston's grammar school. Isabel was raped and then strangled. Her body was buried in a field and would only be discovered when Manuel pointed out the spot to the police. In the early hours of January 1st, 1958, Manuel broke into the Uddingtons' home of the Smart family, where he shot Peter and Doris Smart and their 10-year-old son Michael. Manuel stayed in the house for a week, living on the Smarts' food and surprisingly looked after their cat. 45-year-old Peter Smart had some cash and new banknotes in the house, which he was saving for a family holiday. Peter Manuel took the Smarts' car and strangely gave a lift to a policeman looking into Isabel Cook's death. A bartender in a pub became suspicious of Manuel when he paid for rounds of drinks using new banknotes. This was in the days before ATM machines when new notes were not a common sight. This led to Manuel's arrest on the 13th of January 1958. Police were able to identify the banknotes as belonging to Peter Smart. Additionally, police had letters written to William Watts, while the latter was on remand, containing details that only the killer could have known. Manuel confessed to 8 murders while in custody. He came to trial at the Glasgow High Court before Mr. Justice Cameron on the 12th to the 29th of May in '58, where he pleaded not guilty and withdrew his confession, claiming it was extracted under coercion. He was represented by Harold Leslie, W.R. Grieve, and A.M. Morrison, but on the 9th day of the trial dismissed them and decided to conduct his own defense. It took the jury just 2.5 hours to convict him of 7 murders. Mr. Justice Cameron directed them to acquit Manuel on the charge of killing Ann Nealons. At 8 a.m. on Friday the 11th of July 1958, Harry Allen, assisted by Harold Smith, led Manuel a few paces from his cell to the gallows. Manuel's last words were, quote, "Turn up the radio and I'll go quietly," end quote. The execution took just 8 seconds to carry out, and 24 seconds after the drop, Manuel was certified dead by Dr. David Anderson, the prison's medical doctor. His body was taken down at 8:35 a.m. and placed in an open coffin for the inquest held at 9:30 a.m. before Sheriff Alan Walker. Father Smith conducted a burial service later that day, and Manuel was interred in an unmarked grave near the wall of D Hall.